14. I'm now going to link up with Vedabase. If someone can please confirm that you can see the screen and hear me properly.
We can hear you properly, but we don't see the database yet.
Has it come up?
Yes, now it came up. Thank you.
Thank you. Adhisthana tatha karta karana cha prathak vidham vividhascha prathak cheshta daiva chaivatra panchamam. Adhishthanam tatha karta karanam cha prathak vidham vividhascha prathak cheshta daiva chaivatra panchamam. Adhishthanam tatha karta karana cha prathak vidham vividhascha prathak cheshta daivam chaivatra panchamam. Would some devotee please like to chant?
Adhishtanam tada karta karanam ja pradakvidam vividamscha pradakcheshta devam chaivatra panchamam.
Thank you, Sameshwar Prabhu. Anybody else? Very good. So we'll read the synonyms, translation, and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Synonyms: Adhishthanam, the place; Tatha, also; Karta, the worker; Karanam, instruments; Cha, and; Prathak Vidham, of different kinds; Vividah, various; Cha, and; Prathak, separate; Cheshta, the endeavors; Daivam, the supreme; Cha, also; Eva, certainly; Atra, here; Panchamam, the fifth. Translation: the place of action, the body, the performer, the various senses, the many different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the supersoul. These are the 5 factors of action. Purport: the word Adhisthana refers to the body. The soul within the body is acting to bring about the results of activity and is therefore known as Karta, the doer. That the soul is the knower and the doer is stated in the Shruti. Esha hi drishta shrashta, Prashna Upanishad 4.9. It is also confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra by the verses Nyota eva and Karta Shastartha Vatatvat 2.3.33. The instruments of actions are the senses, and by the senses the soul acts in various ways. For each and every action, there is a different endeavor. But all one's activities depend on the will of the Supersoul, who is seated within the heart as a friend. The Supreme Lord is the Supercause. Under these circumstances, he who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the Supersoul, situated within the heart, is naturally not bound by any activity. I'll read this again. He who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the Supersoul, situated within the heart, is naturally not bound by any activity. Those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Everything is dependent on the Supreme Will, the Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna. So we'll chant the Mangala Charan prayers. Om Agnantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katabhayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapad Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishnabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So thank you once again. We read the translation and the purport. So now let's study it a little more. So what we're going to be learning is understanding the elements of action. So now here it talks about action, activity, and all of us do action. There is no person who can remain inactive. Even in fact, when we are sleeping, there is activity going on. Even when one is in coma, there is activity going on. So understand what comprises of action. Let's deconstruct this thing called action. Then we will also understand about Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. Today is his appearance day. Like Simeshwar Prabhu mentioned that, it's a very, very, very auspicious day. So it is our duty, on appearance, disappearance, to glorify. Otherwise, also we should glorify great Vaishnavas. Why? It is a sense of gratitude. It is because of their effort. It is because of their mercy that we are even engaged in bhakti. In absence of that, not possible. They say, right? How fortunate we are. Chaitanya Charitamrita has this verse, Brahmande Brahmite Kona Bhagyavana Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bija Guru Prasad, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai. By the mercy of Krishna, one gets a Guru, and by the mercy of Guru, one gets Krishna. That Bhakti Lata Bij, Lata is a creeper, that starts sprouting in our heart and our consciousness gets purified. So if you see a creeper always has a support. It cannot exist on its own. So we, as our sadhakas, we are like creepers. A bhakti is like a creeper and it needs the support system. And that support system is the Vaishnava Sangha, the sadhana that we do, the Guru's instructions. And the more that we cling on to it, the more rapidly we can grow. And that's how our consciousness grows. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, we will, of course, you could speak forever on the glories of Vaishnav, but we have limited time, so we'll take the main point. And the group discussion for today is going to be how to follow the Lion Guru's instructions. Now, some of you were there in the morning Bhagavad class where I had the service of doing this morning's Bhagavad Katha, and we discussed one specific instruction. So we'll review that, and then what is the practical application, how we'll be able to implement it in our day-to-day lives. The picture you see, you're very familiar with it. Karma, activity, action. Whatever action we are doing is getting us trapped in this birth, old age, disease, death cycle. This body gets over, soul gets on to the next body based on its desires, 8.4 million desires, 8.4 million bodies. And then similarly, as we said earlier, you cannot remain inactive. You have to do action, but then there is some action which is called akarma, which doesn't incur any reaction. And that leads to liberation. Liberation from what? Liberation from this material contamination, this conditioned state that we are all caught up in, and go back to our original position in Godhead. Hare Krishna. As usual, my credit to His Grace Gauranga Priya Prabhu, whose notes, the Bhagavad Gita notes, I refer to when I prepare for the Bhagavad Gita classes. So let's first understand what is the body and soul relationship. Okay, we all understand that there is the soul. We are the spirit soul. Aham Brahmasmi. I am not the body, I am the soul. Sing Nithai Gaura Hari Bol. So we understand this, at least intellectually, philosophically, we can understand we are the soul. And there are many logical and very reasonable explanations as to, why you are the soul and not the body. Simple example, someone dies. I have to attend a funeral tomorrow. Someone in my distant relation has passed off. When we say, oh, the person has gone, gone where? The body is still lying here. So who is that person who has gone? Who is that person who has left this body? The body is physically over there. But we say, oh, that person has gone. Or we say, my hand, my house, my car, my wife. Who's that my? Who's that my? Who has that sense of ownership? That is the soul, completely separate from the body. So we have the soul. Now with the soul comes the false ego. False ego is the sense of I am. There is always this ego is the distinct identity of the soul. Now this false ego is, the ego becomes false when it has a misunderstanding of who it is. Now the correct understanding of the soul, when it is not in an illusion or when it is not contaminated, the soul knows that it is Nityara Krishna Das, that I am an insignificant, infinitesimal part of the infinite whole. The infinite whole we call Krishna, the infinitesimal part is who I am. And because I'm the part of the whole, the part's constitutional position is to serve the whole. That's when there is harmony and balance. But when the part thinks, no, I want to be separated from the whole, it really has no value. And that understanding that I am all in all, that is called the false ego. Then from the false ego, so you see the soul, the one which is in yellow, that is a spiritual quantity, a spiritual element. Everything about that is matter. So you have the false ego, then you have intelligence. So the false ego is very, very subtle. The soul is the most subtle. Then you have false ego, then more subtle than false ego. Then you have the intelligence, you have the five senses, and then you have the gross body. Now, if you see, the gross body is something physically that we can see, touch, engage with. For the senses, there's no direct connection. Like if there's a body, if I can pinch you, you also feel it, but even I'm feeling you pinching you, correct? So there is that direct sense perception. Whereas the senses that we see, the sight, hearing and all, that comes in through, if there is a sound, then I can hear it. If there is light, I can see something. If there is air, I can smell something. Very, very subtle. Then more subtle than that is intelligence. We can't see intelligence. We can't taste intelligence, but we can see the effects of the intelligence. And more subtle than the intelligence is a false ego. the misidentity or the misunderstanding of who I am. And that false ego is even more subtle. But please understand, all these are material quantities. And then there is this soul. So the soul, you can look at it as like the casing. You know, you have these Russian dolls, if you're familiar with. There's a big doll, and then you remove it. There's one more small doll on its side. You remove that covering. There's one more. There's one more. There's one more. Right? Or Govardhan Bhakta Prabhu was giving the example of an onion. You start peeling the layers off. You keep peeling the layers, all the external layers, and finally you get to that little bud. So you could look at that as an analogy. So this is the equation of the body and soul. Another explanation given is that the consciousness or the Atma, consciousness is the symptom of presence of soul. This is what Prabhupada has said. Consciousness is to be aware of. The soul is a chit. It is aware. It has this chit potency, the chit quality. Chit means awareness, correct? Matter is not aware. This table is matter. It is not aware. So similarly, the skin of mine is also like matter, made up of earth, water, fire, air. We know those panchabhutas, right? But it has no consciousness. It's inert. When matter gets infused with spirit, that's where the consciousness happens. So that's why if someone pinches me here, this consciousness pervades the entire body. The soul, look at it like a radiance. It pervades the entire body, and that's how it becomes aware. So that is the consciousness, the example given. There's this consciousness, right? The body, like a chariot. Then the intelligence, buddhi. This buddhi is like the chariot driver. Then the mind is compared to the reins. Reins are those like rope, which holds and controls the horses. And the horses are compared to the five senses. Now, in a material condition, each of these five senses is running helter-skelter. So just think about it, how rough the ride would be, where the horses are totally berserk, out of control. They're running wild here and there. And this intellect is just so weak, it can barely control the senses through the mind. What is going to happen to the passenger, the Atma? It's a total bumpy ride. So this is, keep in mind, the relation of the body and soul. Of course, if you have any questions, please don't keep it for the end. Or if you have a comment or a realization, unmute yourself and please ask or share. Now, what is the super soul and the soul relation? Now we know, right? This is the body and the soul relation. So what is the Paramatma and the Atma? What is that equation? So the first thing we need to understand, this picture on the left, is that Krishna, in his expansion as Paramatma, is with each and every living entity. From the huge blue whales in the sea, and even bigger than blue whales are this fish called Timingala, to a very, very small, tiny ant and even the microscopic organisms. They're also jiva, just a different body. Super soul accompanies. The super soul is never independent, never, ever, ever independent. Always in the company. The soul, sorry, it's always in the company of. This is another thing, that we are not independent, we are always dependent. Now, an analogy is given as two birds. So you can see on the right, there are these two birds sitting in the tree, on the branch of a tree. Now, this bird who's flapping his wings, Chanchal, that is the soul. All the desires come and, flapping the wing. And this bird who's sitting here is his friend, the super soul, who accompanies him. He never leaves him, no matter what. Never, ever, ever the super soul leaves. So the super soul is a witness. And all the desires and all this flapping and all that which is happening, he sanctions it, he allows it. Without the super soul's sanction, nothing happens. And there's this very famous saying you must have heard that uske marzi ke bina, even a leaf, without his will, not even a leaf will move. In the Christian faith, there's this prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Hallowed means sacred. Same like what we do, Naam, correct? The importance of Naam. Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. आपकी जो मर्जी है, on earth as it is in heaven, thy will be done. So he sanctions every desire that the soul has. So a great Acharya, Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan, he says that we are the doers. And this activities comes from a free will. We all have free will. Why do we have free will? Because of love. Very simple. Now, Krishna, just by looking, his glance, he impregnates, he agitates the material world, and all this beautiful, complex thing comes, not just Mother Earth, nature, but even millions and billions and countless universes just by his glance. You think he can't make us all obedient? Who are we? Nothing. But Krishna wants to engage in a relationship out of choice, not out of force. You can love someone out of choice, not out of force. If you're forced to love someone, it is just going to be a show. So he has given us this free will. It is his gift to engage in a relationship of love with him, but we misuse this free will. We become envious. Why should I be the one serving Krishna? I want to be the bhog. I want to be the bhogi. Okay, this is the place where you can try to be the little Ishvara. So what Baldev Vidyabhushan says is, Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan, is that we are the doers, and these activities come from our free will. But keep in mind, it is never independent. It's not that cause independent. That comes from the sanction, the line above. Okay, so keep these things in mind as we go further on. Now, the main part, how action occurs. There are 5 stages for an action to happen. First stage is it needs a place of action, the field, kshetra, the body. This is where the action happens, right? You need this body to act upon something. You're sitting, watching, on your sofa, and then you feel thirsty. What you do? You get up, you start walking, and then you go to the fridge and you get yourself a glass of water. So this body, the place of action. Then there is the doer, karta. Okay. The doer is consciousness which is reflected in a false ego. Understand this. I am the doer is the type of consciousness which comes in a false ego, that misidentity. And then the soul, thinking, willing, feeling. Thinking, feeling, willing, and then acting. He brings about whatever is the result. Then how it happens is through the senses. These are the instruments of action. Karana. Cheshta, our endeavor. The effort that is put. So when we finally thinking, feeling, willing, then the life is like a symphony, a harmony. It moves the different parts of our body to accomplish whatever we have set out to do. All these are material activities, 1, 2, 3, 4. And finally is Daivam. That the will of the super soul. The will of the super soul. So the Paramatma, all these things happen till Cheshta. Then the Paramatma says, go ahead. Now, very interesting. There's action, there's sanction, there's free will. How is all this correlated? I like this picture. So you see here, there is a puppet. Can anyone tell me what these strings are? Who's controlling these strings? Hare Krishna.
The person who's
Anything.
performing the show,
The puppet is the person who's performing the action. Yes. So you could think of him as the soul, the body soul combined. The strings, we see these strings over here.
the director, who's like guiding the puppet.
How is it happening? Correct. You're on the right path, Bharat.
Through that, Krishna tells through that 3 ropes, right, of Maya, goodness, passion, and ignorance.
Excellent. Excellent. So all this is coming under the superintendent, Mother Durga. And we think I'm a controller. We think I'm a controller. We are nothing. Once one devotee went to Prabhupada's disciple, and with a lot of enthusiasm, he said, Srila Prabhupada, I'm your most obedient disciple, or I'm your most humble disciple, or something. So Prabhupada looked at him and said, you are the most of nothing. Understood? We are nothing. We are nothing. So when we understand, let's get into this. What is the action, sanction, free will? Sanction we know comes from Paramatma, right? Free will, and what is the relationship? Hare Krishna. Okay. Now, understand this question. Whatever I am doing is being sanctioned by Krishna. So mera kuch marzi nahi hai. There is nothing which is mine, right? There's nothing which I am doing. Okay. So how am I any different than a stone or any other material object? And then the Shastra say, oh, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. Whole laundry list is there, right? What to do, what not to do. So all these things are applicable to a jiva who has some sense of action. He can take action on his own. But then everything is being sanctioned. Finally, final authority is Krishna. Then, why is all these things for me? Why isn't it for Krishna? Or why am I the victim of karma when finally it is Krishna who's doing it? Recently there was that shooting in the school, right? 5-6-year-old took a gun and killed his teacher, shot her in school. Now the child is small. So they are saying that the parent is responsible. So similarly, I'm like a wild child performing these actions. But the parent, in this case, that is the super soul, is letting me do it. So isn't the super soul responsible? It's a very valid question. Then why have all these do's and don'ts? So the explanation given is that we jivas are receiving a body. Today I have this male body. Okay, someone is a female, someone is a donkey, someone is a horse, whatever. Okay, and each of this body has certain capabilities. Like you see me, I have weak eyesight, so I need these glasses. But you see the body of an eagle from 1 mile high in the sky, he can see a small little rabbit and they can sweep down and eat it. That's his food. So each of the body has a specific potency. And when he occupies that body, he becomes like a proprietor of that body. Okay. Now, when I get these potencies, like the human being is on the top of the animal food chain, if you look at it, right on top. Why? Because he has the strongest intellect. So intelligence is much more superior than someone who has good eyesight or balam, like a elephant, right? So he takes control of his body. And then whatever were the desires, karma is what I have desire, I act, and I get another reaction to it, and I get accordingly a body which would be able to fulfill my desires. So we look at karma as a punishment, but karma is actually a self-inflicted wound. So we take control of this, and then whatever are those unfulfilled desires, either in this lifetime or coming from countless lifetimes, okay, we take control with the purpose of fulfilling those karmic endeavors. Now, the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, in all these coverings, the first slide, you remember the soul and all that, Supreme Lord is there. Okay? And he is sanctioning the jiva's activity and inspires him to act. He sanctions it. Okay, karo. An example you could look at it is that, yeah, we have New Jersey Turnpike. Very nice highway, correct? Of course, very relative term. If you go on the Autobahn in Germany, New Jersey Turnpike looks a little bit like a country road with places where it has potholes and things like that. So that provision, that facility is given by the government. New Jersey state government has built it, and then you get a license to drive, means you're qualified. So you have to use this properly. Now, we with a free will, and it posts, okay, over here it is 35 miles, construction is going on, it becomes slow, 65 miles, whatever, it posts all these instructions along the way. But we, out of our own free will, we do what we like. I will continue. Where it is showing me that go at 35, I'm going 70. I'm going 70. So that sanction, you can look at the sanction as the facility is provided. Like just as the government provides the facility, but my free will is the one which is abusing it. So this way, there's no contradiction between Supreme Lord's control and our own free will to act. Or, please understand, free will is to act or refrain from acting. Now, to act or to refrain from acting comes from a position of making use of this buddhi, this intelligence. Now, if our intelligence is a slave to the mind rather than being a controller of the mind, if the mind is controlling our intelligence, then we just act on whatever desire we want. But if the intelligence is strong, it says, hey, don't go 70 in a 35-mile zone. You could cause serious injury or death to yourself or others, and there will be consequences. Then you say, oh, okay, then you apply your brakes and get your foot off the pedal and drive properly. Now, how do you make the intelligence strong? Which is what we need, the Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, these instructions, what to do, what not to do. Otherwise, we are all impulsive, based on our whims. Jo bhi aate, karenge. Hare Krishna. So, now we will, any question or comment or realization thus far? Okay, so we will read a little bit about the Lion Guru. So, Maharaj in the calendar appeared, the English calendar, February 6th, 1874 at 3:30 in the afternoon. And he was named Bimala Prasad because his parents had prayed to Bimla Devi. And Bimala Prasad means the mercy of Bimla, of course, last name Datta. And then he was known as, we know, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, where Jagannath Puri, holy, 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 holy land. Okay. And pretty close by, his father, Bhakti Vinod Thakur Maharaj. He was a magistrate and his house was very close by to the Puri temple. And he was the fourth son. Maharaj's mother's name is Shri Yukta Bhagavati Devi. And the time of his birth, the 32 bodily symptoms of a great personality was pointed out by an astrologer. And his umbilical cord came as his janau. You know how this Brahmin thread we wear, those who have taken Brahman Diksha. So the astrologer commented, I've done many horoscopes in my life, but I have never before seen such a horoscope filled with all signs of a great personality. This child will become world famous as a brilliant teacher of life's ultimate goal. when great personalities appear, they don't appear as a karmic reaction. They appear out of mercy. These Vaishnavas are representatives. They are associates of Krishna. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj his Swarup is Nayan Manjari. So this condition is so degraded, they come periodically to deliver us. So keep this in mind. So when Maharaj was a little baby, the Rath Yatra festival was going on and the cart stopped in front of Bhakti Vinod Maharaj's house and it refused to move 3 days. Then finally they brought the child and placed at the lotus feet of Lord Jagannath. And then an auspicious sign happened where the garland on its own fell from the neck of Lord and on Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. And that's where they did the Annaprashna, that grain ceremony of Jagannath Prasad. So, and when they were looking for the vocational, the child, they keep money and they keep book shastras. Immediately he went and embraced the Bhagavatam, which was an indication that he's going to be a preacher. I mean, we can read this, who's interested, please read it. I'll encourage you, ISKCON Desire Tree. So when he was 7 years, we'll just read snippets from this, okay, in interest of time. When Bimla Prasad was 7 years old, his father was constructing a building in Calcutta, and a deity of Lord Kurma was unearthed. And that's when Bhakti Vinod Thakur Maharaj told him that you must do daily worship, vidhi of that deity. So this child from a very early age, his father was also a great Vaishnava. He would hear his father preaching with a lot of attention. Just see this hearing, how important hearing is. Okay. And then Bhakti Vinod Thakur, as well as they have to see how a small boy, kids are not interested. They're more interested in playing and doing masti and all that. And philosophical talks and all that, usually it is for adults. I mean, usually that's what we think. And more so in the contemporary times, you say, "Arey, kya ye bhakti kar rahe?" It's for all old age only. No, that's a misconception. So here the small child was with total absorption, total attention. Absorption means attention, no diversion here, there, looking around and all. And then later on, he was trained in publishing and proofreading Bhakti. So see how he's getting connected in Bhakti. And that spiritual journal called Sajjana Toshini. And when he was 11 years old, Bimla Prasad toured various places where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, of course, West Bengal, Calcutta, Mayapur, all close by. And he had a photographic memory. He could read just something once and recall perfectly. In Bhagavatam, it is said, as time passes by, this memory becomes short-lived. Our memories just gets corrupted. So here it shows that reading once that he had a spiritual personality. And he could recall it with perfect clarity. Trained in mathematics and astrology. He was a great astronomer. Great astronomer. What more can we read? Yeah, his initiation was with, he became a great scholar. In fact, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, his English was so powerful that even the Englishmen who were at that time the occupiers of India, they needed a dictionary to understand. Think about it. He was so powerful, a scholar in Sanskrit, a scholar in astronomy, astrology. He was, and more importantly, on the science of bhakti. Maharaj had taken a vow to chant 1 billion rounds And he was in a small little hut with a, somewhat all not proper roof. And when it used to rain, water used to come in, Maharaj would sit with an umbrella and continue chanting his rounds. He had taken that vow. And we, especially me, have all the luxury and all the comforts, everything. How do I chant? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Hare. So all these little snippets that we see should be as instructions of what we could imbibe in our life. Follow in the footsteps, the determination. Here it is his determination. Jayadvaita Maharaj had said the difference between following in the footsteps of a Vaishnava and imitating a Vaishnava. Imitation is where we copy the form. We copy the form, the external. Oh, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj sat with the umbrella and in the rain he was chanting. Even I'll go out in the rain and sit with an umbrella and chant. No, rascal mentality. Imitation is the form. Following is the essence and the instruction. Obedience to that essence and the instruction is following in the footsteps of a Vaishnava. So all these things we should try and follow the essence, what we could get through this. And rather than jump to conclusions of our own monkey mind, with a Vaishnava who would tell us that, guide us, this is how you do it, this is how you don't do it. So, this is pretty exhaustive. Shiva Ramaswamy has written this essay. Please read it. And what we'll do is, we'll understand one instruction, which is very, very, we covered this in the morning Bhagavad Katha class, is very, very, very important and very useful for sadhakas in progressing on the path of bhakti. When the faults in others misguide and delude you, have patience, introspect, and find faults in yourself. Know that others cannot harm you unless you harm yourself. I'll give all of you a minute or two. Please read this. Please internalize it, and then we'll have a discussion on it. Hare Krishna. So for a group discussion, I'll encourage everybody, unmute yourself, please, and join wholeheartedly. Don't feel embarrassed. Don't feel shy. Don't think you're saying the wrong answer. People will think you're foolish. No. These are spiritual topics. It's above and beyond whatever is our material limitation. We will only get to learn. Like last evening, yesterday's Bhagavad Gita class, Sudhakar Prabhu asked a question, and the wonderful reply that Simeshwar Prabhu and Krishna Namanand Prabhu gave, such detailed, it was like as though you're actually in those places. You could visualize how these things are. So please participate. So, the question, you've read this, you've internalized Maharaj's instruction. How can we follow? How can we introspect? What are the things we can do to introspect? What are the things we can do to avoid finding faults in others? It's open to all. Please share your comments. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. I have seen, some examples like, in my personal life also. If I concentrate on other devotees' fault, it just keeps like bothering me, or I seen it bothering other people also, like when they talk about it. And the more they think about it, and they somehow become like that, So I think that's why we should not be actually finding the faults in others. That's what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Swami says, try to find it fault in you, because then you will be like more cautious of not doing that fault again, and your whole concentration focus will be on like our own fault and how to avoid that.
Okay, so there is one reason that the experiences, and very true, thanks, Balram Nitai Prabhu, very true, that the more we find it in others, the more it develops in us. Actually, it's not that we don't have the fault. Finding fault in others means what is in us, wo bahar nikal gaya. Wo bahar nikal gaya. Like you say, na, in kitchad, you throw a stone, wo kitchad udta hai. But that kitchad is in us only. And finding it is we basically thrown a stone in our own consciousness, and it's just we're finding it in that kitchad ka wo chita ud gaya over there. So it makes sense. It makes sense. Avoid it. Avoid it. So how will I avoid it? That's a good reason why we shouldn't find faults. How would I avoid this? Because it happens. We are conditioned. And kya hoega ki almost against our will, that those thoughts will come up. So what should we do? What can you do to stop criticizing others? You means all of us, me included.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandot Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for a wonderful class. Prabhuji, when we just find a fault in others, that time we should first think inside what we are and how we will feel if somebody will pinpoint on our faults. So then when we keep ourselves in that person's place, then we can avoid that. I feel like that.
So what you're saying, if I understand it right, Mataji, is that put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Yes, yes.
And what he or she is going through.
Absolutely.
Good. Rather than
like बोलते ना मराठी में कि निंदकाचे घर असावे शेजावी. So we can only pinpoint, we can just tell them in nicer way so that they can improve in that.
Yeah.
But not like criticizing.
Yeah. There is actually even a technique of how, until and unless, the Vaishnavas instruct, until and unless you're in a superior position, and it is done out of love, not anger.
Yes, yes.
To lift the person from his condition, his mistakes, you're better off not telling, because it would only aggravate the situation. The other person, see, no one is perfect, only Krishna is perfect. Yeah. You have your imperfection, I have my imperfection. So sometimes, even if my intent is right, there could be a clash of egos and head. And then it will feel that, array, I was only trying to help and this is how she's behaving. And then the other person is thinking, who is he? Bada ban ke aaya, devotee. It happens.
No, yeah, very true.
So empathize with that person. And there are all these instructions tie in, right? Trinadapi Sunichana. Every Vaishnava will know this verse, Trinadapi Sunichana. But how difficult it is to implement it. Yeah. Someone didn't tell me Hari Bol, then in my mind, rascal. Because I expect Hari Bol because I'm on that padvi. I'm on that pedestal. I do so much seva. I know so much of the Shastras. I'm more years in Hare Krishna than you are. So you should tell me first, Hari Bol. You didn't? So all this is how our mind, because we all want to be little Ishwaras. We all want that pratishtha. Yes, someone forgot Hari Bol. You say Hari Bol. It doesn't make you any lower by you greeting a person first. So empathize, very good point. Yes. What else? How can we introspect? How do we introspect? Introspect means to look within. Does anyone take time out to be with themselves? We have about 10 devotees. Or is it so busy with work and family responsibilities? Ye, wo. Do you get time to reflect? Time with yourself. Do you talk to yourself?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, just in the morning class, I just wanted to mention about it. You were talking about time pass, right? So in one of the kathas, I heard that like people do time pass, but devotees, they releases their mind through pastimes. So I like that sentence. So I wanted to share with everyone.
Very good. Time pass and pastime, yes.
Yeah.
So nice. So nice. I'll use it. Very good.
Very
So,
good.
you know, our introspection is basically downtime, jo bolte hain na. Many of you must be in IT. So the servers, etc., you say, na, there is a planned downtime, especially if you're in the software as a service business. You have all these servers working all the while. So you have a planned downtime wherein you'd put some patch, you'd put some upgrade, or whatever it is. Similarly, we also need downtime. This mind is all the time. Of course, we do our japa, we're doing DT worship, we're doing seva, everything which is nice. But stop for a minute. John Lennon had sung that song. Life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. We all are making plans and life is happening. So for a moment, we need to step back. And even if you take 1 minute, even if you take 5 minutes, just reflect. Reflect. Think about where am I, where I want to be, what are my anarthas, how can I correct it? Introspect, look within. Don't look within at how great I am. I started with half a round of japa. Today I'm doing 16 rounds. Ekadashi, I'm doing 25 rounds. No, don't think about greatness. Think about what we can correction. In the modern thing, they say meditation. We do japa meditation, yes, but introspection. So introspection helps us. And when this instinct comes to criticize someone, school children learn something like stop, drop, and roll when fire happens, right? School children are taught what you do, you stop and you drop, and then you roll. Stop, drop, and roll. Similarly, this desire to criticize someone, either mentally or vocally through words. Before that happens, stop, drop, take a humble position, empathize. When you empathize with someone, is you're not putting yourself on a higher position, you bring yourself at least to his position. And then when you come to his position, you can go further down. How is it I would be able to serve? How you do is then find what are the good qualities in him. That's what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj used to do. When his devotees were having a lot of friction with each other, he called for a huge program. And everyone was there. What he did is he called the one. So, disciple A was having a panga with disciple B. So he called disciple A and he says, now you have to talk about all the good qualities of disciple B, and made disciple B talk all about the good qualities of disciple A. Very innovative. So when we find that this impulse comes to criticize or something, stop, drop. And when we roll out all the good things that you would see in that person. And if you can't see because it happens, he's a total rascal, usme to kuch gun hi nahi hai. But it can happen. At that point in time, start finding for little things. No, he at least is coming and serving. Then your mind will say, oh, he's not serving in the right mood. Yes, but he's serving better than someone who's not serving at all. Little, and when we practice this, it'll become a habit. And gradually, we avoid finding faults. Hare Krishna. Anyone has a comment or a realization? We can now bring it to a close. Okay, so finally, thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada had said, chant and be happy. Believe me, this chanting, even we are doing it, I'm doing it so imperfectly. Thoda asar ho hi jata hai. And the question comes, oh, I've been chanting 30 years, still I'm not happy. Understand, chant properly, and then you can be happy now and forever. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj ki
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hari Bol.
Jai
Hare
Prabhupada. Simeshwar Prabhu, over to you.
Maybe their Bhakti Viksha started.
Fridays Prabhu does Bhakti Viksha. Very
Yeah.
good. So we can bring it to a close. No one has a question, comment. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhya evacha patitanam
पावनेभ्यो
vaishnavebhyo
नमो नमः।
Vaishnavrinda ki
Jai.
जय
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki
Jai.
जय
Nithai Gaur Premanandi.
Hari, Hari,
हरि
Hari.
हरि 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 बोल।
Thank you, everybody. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
हरि बोल।
Hari
हरि बोल।